Have you ever wondered how a huge company actually plans for the future? I mean, it's not magic, right? It's something called a master budget. And it's kind of like this central nervous system for a company's entire financial and operational game plan. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how one of these things is built.
Yeah, seriously, think about it. How does a massive clothing company make sure they don't end up with a mountain of shirts nobody wants, while at the same time completely running out of their best-selling pants? Well, it's not guesswork. It all comes down to a really detailed, interconnected plan, the master budget. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're literally going to build a budget from the ground up. We'll start with the big picture, and then we'll see how just one number, the sales forecast, kicks off a whole chain reaction that affects production, what we buy, who we hire, everything, until we have a complete financial roadmap.
Okay, let's dive right in. At its heart, a master budget is all about one thing: taking a company's big goals, like revenue targets and growth, and translating them into a concrete plan with actual numbers that every single department can look at and follow.
And here's the crucial thing to get. It's not just one big, scary document. It's actually a whole set of smaller budgets. You've got a sales budget, a production budget, a materials budget, and they all have to talk to each other to create one single cohesive strategy.
So, where on earth does a massive planning process like this even begin? Well, it all starts with one fundamental question. What do we actually think we're going to sell? To see how this works, let's follow a clothing company as they plan for the month of April.
This right here, this is the cornerstone of the entire master budget. It's the sales forecast. Everything that's about to happen, all the hiring, the purchasing, the production schedules, it all comes directly from these two key numbers you see here: the plan to sell 35,500 shirts and 22,000 pants.
Okay, so how does that forecast start the chain reaction? Well, once we know what we expect to sell, the very next logical step is to figure out what we need to make. The next domino to fall is what's called the production budget.
And the logic behind this is actually pretty simple when you think about it. To figure out how many things you need to produce, you start with what you think you'll sell, then you add a little buffer for what you want left on the shelves at the end of the month, and then you just subtract whatever you already have in stock.
And right here, we see that exact formula in action. The company expects to sell 35,500 shirts. They want to have a 2,000 shirt buffer left over at the end of the month, and they subtract the 1,500 they already have. The result, as you can see highlighted, is a production target of exactly 36,000 shirts, and they just do the same math for the pants.
Great, so now we have our production targets. But, you can't just wish 36,000 shirts and 22,500 pants into existence. You're gonna need resources. Specifically, you need the raw materials and you need the people to actually put them all together.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Think of this as the company's recipe book. To budget accurately, they have to know exactly what goes into every single product. This table details things like, for example, that one shirt requires exactly 1.5 meters of fabric and 8 buttons. This becomes a standard for all of our next calculations.
Okay, a little heads up. The next slide has a much bigger table on it, but don't be intimidated. I promise it might look complex, but it's really just a series of simple multiplication steps based on that recipe we just saw. All right, here it is, the direct materials budget. This table's whole job is to figure out exactly how much fabric, thread, and buttons the company needs to go out and purchase to hit those production goals we just set. Let's just focus on one line to see how this works. It's super straightforward. We know we need to produce 36,000 shirts. Our recipe says each shirt needs 1.5 meters of fabric. We just multiply those two numbers together and we get our target. We need to buy 54,000 meters of fabric. The entire budget is just that same simple logic repeated over and over for every item. So, now that we've planned for all our materials, we can use that exact same step-by-step logic to plan for our direct labor. The actual people on the factory floor doing the cutting, sewing, and inspecting.
And this is the direct labor budget. Its purpose is to take our production targets and convert them into the total number of work hours needed in each department. And then, of course, to calculate the total cost of all that labor. And once again, let's just break it down to see how simple it is. The recipe card told us that the cutting department can process 5 shirts per hour. Well, since we need to produce 36,000 shirts, we can just divide that by 5 to figure out that we need to schedule 7,200 hours of work in that department. It's as simple as that. So, we've basically built our entire operational plan. We know what to sell, we know what to make, we know how much material to buy, and we know how many hours to schedule. But what does all of this cost? Now it's time to translate all that planning into the language of finance.
And here is where it all connects. On the left, you see our production plan. On the right, our cash budget. Remember those 54,000 meters of fabric we needed to buy? And the 7,200 hours of labor we needed to pay for? Well, those decisions translate directly into cash outflows on the financial side. Every single operational choice has a direct financial consequence, and this is where we see it happen.
And the final destination of this whole journey is right here, the budgeted balance sheet. All those individual budgets we made, sales, materials, labor, cash, they all roll up into this one single report. This gives the company a complete snapshot of its projected financial health, answering questions like, what will we own and what will we owe at the end of the month?
So what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, budgeting isn't some single scary event. It's a logical, step-by-step process. Second, everything, and I mean everything, hinges on that one crucial number, the sales forecast. From there, you build the operational plans, and then those plans become the foundation for your final financial reports. And that brings us to our final question for you. For our clothing company, it was the number of shirts and pants they expected to sell. So think about your own world, your business, a project you're working on. What is that one cornerstone metric, that single number, that if you don't know it, nothing else can be planned?